To Te Tai Rāwhiti, the east coast now. And with the onset of spring comes a host of beautiful blooms and flowers. Janina Schwanneker caught up with conservationist Graeme Atkins at his home north of Ruatoria, a paradise of protected native plants. There, she learnt more about one of New Zealand's most special flowers.
Just north of Ruatoria, on the east coast of the North Island, Graeme Atkins Drive is a sea of colour. Though it's winter when I visit his collection of rare ngutukākā, or Kakabeak plants, the pinky red and white flowers are already starting to bloom.
Yeah, so this has been a reserve for 25 years, so before we fenced it off, like you could see straight through, so only the kānuku were here, all natives.
We have a beautiful Kakabeak here as well, in full bloom.
I'm using them as the poster boy for threatened plants, so if something like this Kakabeak, you can't tell me it hasn't got charisma. If it can't, turn people's sentiments towards our threatened flora, I don't know what else will.
And with the one we're looking at, which is taller than both of us, is that a fully mature one, would you say?
I think because where it's growing on the edge, because they're margin dwellers, so they love the sun, so might get a little bit more height in it, I'm hoping. So that's probably 3 metres, so which is pretty good for a Kakabeak. So yeah, it's when you see the birds on them in the morning, it's just, you see all the reward for all of this.
And how long do they tend to flower for like this?
They probably go for a month, and so yeah, I'm just hoping this is only a pre-show because we've got our Kakabeak festival in September and I want people to come and see the colour, hopefully.
Don't worry, you'll hear more about the upcoming ngutukākā festival later. It's a conservation effort worth celebrating. Native to New Zealand and vulnerable to almost all pests, there are only about 150 Kakabeak plants known in the wild.
We're lucky I've got 3 different colour sets of Kakabeak growing around our home, and so we've got our local variety, they're red, and that's the Cleanthus maximus, and then we've also got the white and pink. So with the trend of Kakabeak over the last 20 years going from a couple of hundred down to less than 100 left now, we did a genetic study of all the remaining plant populations of Kakabeak, and no surprises that there's no, they're all distinct from each other, and that's because there's no gene flow between them. So yeah, so that's got some of those growing around here, and the pink variety, which is a blend of probably the red and the white to get the pink. So yeah, really, really excited.
Alive with the sound of birdsong, the native flora surrounding Graeme's home is testament to how quickly New Zealand's native vegetation can regenerate when protected. It also serves as a testament to his many years as the Rohi's lone dock ranger.
Being a voice for voiceless was a big part of, big motivator for me. Watching all the changes in our environment, in our taiao, not being able to do much about it. So yeah, just wasn't going to accept that. And yeah, so it's just been the cage rattler, shaking a few trees, and hopefully, for good and for positive change.
And how did your journey into conservation, into working so closely with taiao, how did that begin for you?
Yeah, I was lucky enough that my grandmother and my mother instilled a love of plants. On my mum's side, she's whakapapas to Māhia Nuhaka and Rongo Wahine. And in our whakapapa, we descend from a tohunga whose speciality was the medicinal sides of plants. So yeah, I often wondered that where I had this passion for our plants, where it all came from, and so I blame him.
What did that lead you to? You worked for Doc for a number of years, out in the bush, out in the field.
My first manager that employed me, he caught on pretty quick that I had a bit of a knack for spotting the unusual as far as our plant world, and so where others would see just a green wall, I could see that green wall, but something distinct would just stick out, and so go, oh, what's that? And go back and have a look. And yeah, I was lucky enough to have that ability to find a lot of our rare plants, and so not long into my doc career, I had the dream job of going around checking all the historic plant records for the Gisborne. Back then Gisborne was part of the Hawke's Bay region, and so I check all the historic plant records and get to go back to those sites just to confirm or deny whether those species still existed there. So, and then finding plants that we're still managing to cling on was like finding gold for me. So had a bit of a knack for the plants, and then when you get bitten by the tree bug, you sort of realise that some of these plants have been here for millions of years. Their existence is threatened by our actions, and then so there's a responsibility, I feel, to do something about it, and so that led into the restoration side of my mahi.
Yeah, your work, it followed you home, didn't it? And you have a beautiful slice of paradise here, surrounded by any number of species of native plants. And can you tell me a little bit about how that came about? Just
working for the department, we were doing a lot of monitoring, so a lot of it was out in the Raukumara over a 25 year period. And the idea of monitoring is that you can show that there's something's having an impact on whatever, and so we'd monitor the understory, because in conservation circles, the Raukumara was the last intact understory pretty much in the country. That was because it only had a recent possum invasion history, and the same with the red deer. They've only been here just recently, and so we monitored the understory. And the idea with monitoring is that you can come up with the data to show this is the problem, this is having an impact, and then the bean counters are supposed to give us funding to fix that problem. But it never ever came, or not at a level that was going to make a difference. Knowing how precarious the situation was for a lot of our species, not many people knew what was going on. I just saw it as a last-ditch attempt or effort to make sure that these species continued survival. So you're right in saying that it's like Noah's Ark around here, especially for our plants. I've got some real treasures that I've been able to get to grow and keep them here, in the hope that one day we make their home safe again and that they can go back.
What are some of the challenges in terms of restoration of native flora and fauna here in Te Tairawhiti specifically?
There are quite a few issues, but probably the main one is the prevalence of red deer. As time goes by, our young ones, especially the hunting fraternity, are starting to call them taonga. It's a value set, so they fills a hole in the freezer. What do they get out of the Kakabeak sort of thing? And so that's probably one of the big issues as far as our taiao. And then we have our world famous erosion. I live at the bottom end of the Waipu catchment at Tikapa, been here for 20 years, living here, and every flood the bed rises higher and higher, gobbles up so much of our alluvial flats, all ends up out in the marine. And so we probably have no choice other than we have to do something about it. Otherwise, not so much our kids, but our mokos will not have a place to live here. At the rate of erosion and the aggradation of our riverbeds, those are the two pressing issues for our region.
Not one for sitting idly by, Graeme sees building connection between people and Te Taio as critical to the solution. It's why he's organised the very first ngutukākā festival, taking place in September.
Somewhere near the top, in the top three would have to be our ngutukākā or our Kakabeak. So there's less than 100 of those left in the I was going to say the country, but in the universe. So they only grow here, and half of that, or 60 of those 100 grow here on the east coast. And so the issue is when things become so rare that people no longer interact with them, so it's hard to get people to care about things when they're no longer in their lives. And and for me, ngutukākā is such a beautiful plant, really, really charismatic, and I sort of hold it up as the poster boy for our threatened plants in general. And so got a soft spot for our ngutukākā. The whole gist of the festival, or working on Kakabeak, is that, how do you expect people to care about something when they no longer interact with it? So we started about a trust about 3 years ago, and we've been planting Kakabeak at Kura and Marae, and so we've, especially on our side, on the Ngāti Porou side, and we've branched out around into the Eastern Bay this year, and it's basically focused around Highway 35. What we want to be doing is we want to plant 1,000 Kakabeak along the roadside, but not just anywhere. There's a lot of thought that goes into site selection, and so they're normally steep sites, and their associate plants are grown there as well. And so there'll be your hebes, tutu, karamu, and those species. And if they're there on the side of the road, that lets me know that because those species are palatable as well to stock, to deer, goats. And so if they're there, that means that's not an issue. And Kakabeak looks better when it's grown with its mates. And so we had nearly hit the 1,000 mark last year, but the cyclones came and wiped a few of our sites out. So we're not going to let that slow us down. So, and the idea of those roadside plantings is chances of Joe Public ever going in to see plants in the wild is pretty slim, because the plants in the wild these days grow on bluffs, cliffs and bluffs, and it's not so much that they like it there, it's just that the two main threats, which are deer and goats, can't quite get around to finish them off. And so seeing them on the roadside with the associated species is probably going to be the next best thing to seeing them in the wild. And so having them on the roadside ticks so many boxes, raises the species profile. Hopefully we can generate an annual, we are going to have a festival this year, and hopefully it becomes an annual fixture on our region's calendar. When I show people the plants, and they don't even know it's a native plant, and then when they find out that how dire things are and that there only X amount left, they're pretty keen to help out. And so our festival will be run along the lines of the Rhododendron Festival, and so it'll be over a 3-day period. Day one will be out where I live, and so we've advertised it as the nation's #1 Kakabeak garden. So
pretty proud of that.
Yeah, so it better be good. So I know there's some pretty sharp gardeners out there, and so it better make it worthwhile for everybody to troop up here.
That was conservationist Graeme Atkins speaking to Janina Schwannecker at his home north of Ruatoria. You can see the beautiful ngutukākā in bloom at the upcoming festival, which starts on the 18th of September and runs until the 21st.